Good evening and welcome to this financial wellbeing webinar about budgeting basics. My name is Liz McLardy and I just want to welcome you to this webinar and also the recording if you're listening back to it. Just before we begin, just to make sure that everyone's aware that these financial webinars are just for educational purposes only. So the information that's provided is really general in nature and is not intended to substitute for any advice in terms of investments or legal or tax advice. So a big welcome and hello to everybody, and just really want to acknowledge and appreciate all of the work that you're all doing in the postgraduate space. As we've got from all the pictures that I have here, you're all off doing amazing work. So before we begin, I'd like to do the acknowledgement of country. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands on which we're all connecting from today as you're listening back to this webinar. And I pay respects to the elders past, present, and recognise and celebrate their connection to the role for caring for country over thousands of years, and may their wisdom and strength be with us today. A little bit about myself. My name's Liz McLardy. I have a background as an accountant, primarily in management accounting. It's my sort of first decade of my career in corporate accounting, and then I moved into the educational space. I taught at Southern Cross University, and I've also moved on to some other educational institutes and universities. So I'm a CPA and I partner with the SCPA to provide you with these financial wellbeing webinars to hopefully provide you with some information that can help you and improve your financial wellbeing and help alleviate some stress associated with your finances so that you can then focus on your studies and research and all that important work that you're doing. So in this webinar, we're going to look at 3 key items all around budgeting basics. So this is really a foundational discussion around budgets. So firstly, we're going to have a look at why budgets are helpful, how to create one, and then some strategies around how to stick to one, particularly if you're managing university expenses, but it can really apply to all facets of life. So hopefully you'll be able to take something away from today's webinar and find it useful. So a helpful place to begin when we're talking about budgeting and the value of budgeting is to first look at this research that really explored what is financial wellbeing. And it's a piece of research that was commissioned by ASIC and was conducted a couple of years ago, but really helped to identify what are some of the key elements to financial wellbeing. And once we identify those, we can then look at strategies and we'll find that budgeting is one of those that can help to improve our financial wellbeing. So what you can see here in this slide, that we've got a definition that research came up with in terms of financial wellbeing being when a person is able to meet expenses, have some money left over, is in control of their finances, and feels financially secure now and also in the future. So I've highlighted some of those key central themes. So this feeling of being financially secure is one of the central components of financial wellbeing, and also being in control, so having control over their financial situation and being able to pursue both short and long-term goals. And another central component is around meeting expenses and then also having some additional money left over. So being able to meet those expenses, have a savings buffer, be able to manage your debts, and to be able to afford, little extras here and there. So this is really a really great starting point for us to have in terms of understanding what it is, what are those components that this research found around financial wellbeing. So when we then go to answer the question of, why is a budget helpful? Because most of us, when we hear the word budget, probably our stomach churns a little bit, or it's not the most exciting topic, perhaps one that we avoid for all sorts of reasons. But here, just trying to link to some of those central themes and demonstrate that a budget can actually help fulfill some of these components that will help us to have a greater financial state of well-being. So I'm ticking off in terms of it will help us to feel more financially secure because you'll have a clear understanding of where your money is going. So as opposed to living without a budget and money comes in, goes out, and you'll make decisions probably with a short-term focus and without a holistic view of the complete picture of all that's going on for you. So having a budget really helps you to, at a point in time, decide, okay, where is my money going to go? It enables you to focus on what are the goals, what are the big things and priorities for me in my life at the moment, and will help you to then channel your finances to those goals and help you to achieve them. A budget will help you to make sure that, so this other central theme around meeting expenses with some left over, your budget's going to help you to do that, because you're going to be able to sit down and look at what is my income coming in, what are my expenses going out, and you can then be in control of adjusting those expenses and making decisions about those expenses to ensure that you're meeting them all and being able to manage your debts if you have them, have a savings buffer, and then have some money left over. So you're in control of that once you see those numbers. It will help you to apply for a mortgage. Another benefit of having a budget, most mortgage applications will require you to have a good understanding of what your income and expenses are. So you'll need to provide that to your lending institution. So really great if you've got one, that's going to help you in terms of that and that journey of home ownership. It can certainly help you, moving on to the left-hand side, about that sense of being in control. Again, when you have your budget, you'll be able to see and decide, as I've mentioned earlier, where your money's going. And it can help you to feel in control of the expenses that you have. So if it's your rent or your mortgage, that obviously your food and shelter are the biggest expenses that we all have. And you'll feel much more in control knowing that you've got X amount of money coming in as income, and then you can then look at, well, how much can I afford to spend between each of the different categories that you might have depending on your life situation. And the final one here in the little box at the bottom is we've got budgeting can also give you peace of mind that you can handle unexpected expenses. So if you've been able to create a budget that includes being able to allocate money to build up a savings buffer, and you've achieved that goal of having that savings buffer, you're going to be in a really great position to be able to then manage those situations and times when unexpected expenses do come. You can draw upon those savings as opposed to reaching for any debt, and then pay that off and then build your savings buffer up again. So it's just some really great financial hygiene. So it's really, I guess, to answer the question, why do a budget? Just picked a couple of pictures here to kind of, I guess, pick on that emotion, that feeling that we all want to have in terms of our relationship with money. So to be at peace with it, to feel calm, to feel in control, that's really what we're wanting to achieve. And a budget can certainly help you to do that. And a key takeaway that I'd like you all to have from this webinar is this idea of budgets being like toothbrushes, to make them so an everyday part of your life. You know, everybody needs one. Taking good care of your money by giving every single dollar that you earn a job, tracking your spending, it's just good financial hygiene. So that's just a basic. And if you haven't got a budget, you've never put one together, now is a really good time. If you've signed up and if you're listening back to this recording, there's something that's of interest in there for you, please give it a go. At first, it may feel like a big task, but once you've set up your budget and you've done the hard yards of actually identifying what are my expenses, then it gets much easier, and then you're going to feel like you're in the driver's seat and you can actually start to decide, you know, what of those expenses do you need to modify? Which ones could you eliminate or could you negotiate to reduce? And then that's when it gets much more enjoyable. So that first, you know, getting used to brushing your teeth perhaps when we were younger seemed like such a chore, but once you get into it, you find that it's obviously a really healthy habit. And if you can associate budgets with that same job, that would be great. Now, moving on to our next part of the webinar is to talk about how do we actually create one. So if I've convinced you that a budget is a good idea, or at least you're curious to give it a go, how do you actually create one? So budgets are all about balancing, as you can see in the picture here, all about balancing your income and expenses. So it's about finding a way that suits you, that you feel comfortable with, and that you can carry out ongoing, a way for you to create that budget. So you're going to be able to list out your income and your expenses. If you've got either of those that vary, it's about estimating them, making a general estimate. And most of the time we would be doing a budget for a 12-month period, but depending on where you're at, perhaps you might want to do a 6-month if you've got that something, maybe you're in the middle of your studies and they're going to stop in 6 months' time, and then there's going to be changes. You could then change and set a new budget after that. So it's all about making it work for you. But the key is that you're going to identify and estimate as accurately as you can what is the money that I have coming in and where is my money going. And once you've got an understanding of that, then you can actually, as I've said, sit in the driver's seat and say, okay, do I want to continue spending the money the way I am? So there's a couple of ways, as I've mentioned, and it's really up to you in terms of what works best for you. So you could do a handwritten budget in a notebook. Some people like putting pen to paper. The only challenge with this is if any element changes, it's hard to update because you're going to need to do all of those manual calculations. It is more likely to be prone to error, so easy to make a slip up in a calculation with a calculator. But it might be a place to start if you want to just list out some of those expenses first, or maybe you're wanting to do this on the bus or somewhere where you're out and about and you just want to note things down. You can certainly start with a handwritten budget. You'll also find that there are a lot of apps that you can use as well. So I just did a quick search using Choice, which is a good comparison site that allows you to look at what are some of the benefits and pros and cons of different products. So just grabbed a few here. I personally don't use budgeting apps, but some people find them really helpful. So you can have them connect in with your bank account, and then you can categorize each of your transactions, and you can set your budget ahead of time, and then look at did you meet or exceed those particular budget items. So lots of different apps that you can use. Some you need to pay for, some you can't. But again, it's up to yourself what works best for you. We'll find that a lot of our online banking is, they also give us some of this information as well, and you can start to categorize some of your income and expenses. And you can then use that as the basis for your budgeting as well. So that can be really helpful. You can also, instead of the paper budget, use an Excel spreadsheet to prepare your budget. So probably a little bit more of a step up in terms of making sure that it's calculating everything correctly and you're not having to do that task of adding everything together. So this is just a bit of a snapshot of a template that I use and that I use to work through with students. If they want to meet with me one-on-one, we can do some budgeting together. And at the end of the session, I'll show you there's also a budgeting template that ASIC has created that may be worth having a look at as well. Very similar to this, you can, obviously the key is customizing it. So making it work for you. We all think about how things should be laid out differently, and it may be better if it was horizontal rather than vertical. So it's really ideal for you to set up the budget and to structure it the way that makes sense to you. So here we've got the inflows or the income, even some of the language that you use can also be helpful. Sometimes if we're just talking purely financial terms, that can create barriers for some of us as well, or bring up particular emotions or negativities around it if we're too focused on those things. So sometimes I find changing the language around inflows and outflows can be helpful for people, particularly if you don't have a finance background. So you can have a look at, okay, what are all the inflows of money that are coming in? And it's a matter of listing those out. So you may have Centrelink payments, you may have a part-time job or a full-time job while you're studying. You may also have some variable work on the side. So it's a matter of looking at, okay, where are all the sources of income that I have, and to list those out. You may have them occurring with different frequencies. So if you've got, for example, your Centrelink payments, if they're paid to you monthly, you could then work out by multiplying by 12 what that total yearly amount was, and then divide by 26 to get the fortnightly figure. Because what can be helpful is, although some of these inflows and outflows occur at different frequencies, it's helpful to bring them all down to a common denominator in terms of frequency. So you could then look at, and I would adjust that frequency to the one that your most of your income is paid. So you know when you're paid how much money you kind of need to set aside for everything on a fortnightly basis, even if you're not paying for it on a fortnightly basis. You know, things like your electricity or gas, you may be paying it quarterly. So it's really good to then give you an idea of how much do I need to be putting aside for all of those things to ensure by the time that bill comes, I've got money set aside. So it's just really a matter of sitting down, giving yourself a good chunk of time, assigning that time when you're feeling like you want to complete this exercise as well, sometime when you're not going to be interrupted. Perhaps make it an enjoyable activity, put on some nice music, have a nice cup of tea, and work through identifying what are all of my inflows and then outlining all of the outflows. And you need to obviously add or delete, customize this to reflect the expenses that you have. So it may be rent or mortgage, groceries, they're our biggest ones. A lot of the time our eating out can be the one that can get out of hand. So sometimes a good one to also make sure that we've got a handle on. And then depending on if you've got a car, if you've got particular medications, utilities. So again, this is just a quick snapshot of an example, but I will show you the asset template, which you can download as an Excel file as well. So here you'll start to get an idea is if you had completed this template, you might start to get an idea of how much value that could bring to you and how much peace it can bring you once you've actually sat down and all together in a holistic way have a snapshot of what's all the money that I have coming in and where does it go. Sometimes at that point, it's a really good idea to just sit back and look at the figures and look at, am I spending more than I earn? Am I not? Do I have the potential to save money? And then it's thinking about if you're spending more than you earn, where can I actually adjust some of these expenses to make sure that I change that situation? Because we're going to want, if we go back to the original research around financial well-being and our health and our healthy relationship with money, is to always make sure that we've got some excess over the expenses. So we've got some extra there. That's going to give us that bit of peace of mind and security financially, that we're not just spending our whole paycheck. So it's really about giving every dollar we earn a purpose. And so I hope that this kind of gives you an idea, a snapshot of what that could look like for you, and you'd have all your figures and calculations there. What I would recommend when you are creating your budget is, as I was just about to move on to talk about, is something called a zero-based budget. And a zero-based budget, the principle behind it is that idea of assigning every dollar a purpose. So here we've got different paychecks, side hustle. So we've got income of $5,000. Say that's over 1 month. And then we can see that we've got included in our expenses is giving, food, utilities, housing, transportation, insurance, paying off debt, fund money, and a miscellaneous kind of amount. And that comes to 5,000. So what we're essentially saying in our zero-based budget is that you assign every dollar you earn a purpose. So that purpose may not be just about, buying food or paying your rent or your mortgage, but depending on what your goals are and where you're at. So if you've got debt, you should certainly have one of the jobs that your income's going to carry out is to pay off that debt. So you'd be wanting to see a line there that was indicating how much you're going to be paying off towards your debt. So that would be definitely your minimum payments. And then it would be making extra payments on your debt to make sure that you're working that away. If you're in a situation where you don't have any debt and you're wanting to perhaps build up, making sure that you've got a good emergency or savings fund of 3 to 6 months worth of expenses, that could also be one of your line items, and you would allocate and assign your income that job of building up once you've got that fund built up to your 3 to 6 months worth of expenses, then you might change these around. It might be that you're saving up for a home deposit, you're saving up for a car that you're going to buy outright, secondhand car, maybe a holiday that you're building up for. So this is all about giving your money a job, every single dollar, and that you're never going into debt, consumer debt. If you've got it, you're going to get rid of it. But after that, you're going to be then saving up the money necessary for the goals that you have. So that's your zero-based budget, which is a really great strategy or method for budgeting. Our third item for the webinar is to look at some ways of how do we stick to our budget. So hopefully I've convinced you that a budget's a really important, valuable financial hygiene activity to ensure that's, it's incorporated into your life. So it's not something that you just do, you set and forget. It really needs to be integrated, as that sort of that toothbrush scenario is something that you do. It doesn't have to be do every day, but once you've set your budget, and you may want to check it initially every week to see how you're progressing. And as you're getting into the rhythm of it, it may shift to once a month. And then once it's really moving well, it may just be once a quarter, you check and review. Now, a great way to make sure that you're sticking to your budget initially, particularly with discretionary spending. So you may have your account set up that you have your automatic payments to, pay off your mortgage or your rent or your electricity, however that may be. But for anything discretionary, in the image that I've got here, is it can be really helpful initially if you're having trouble sticking to boundaries that you want to in order to achieve financial goals, is to actually use cash. And I know that's not as easy as it's always been. Some places are not as happy to accept cash, but it really helps you to stick to and stay to the boundaries that you set yourself. We'll say eating out is a great one, or it may be your entertainment budget, where you might do other activities that can easily get out of hand sometimes. For some people, it may be the purchase of clothing. Perhaps that's just a little bit too easy and they find themselves being a little bit reckless in that domain. But whatever it is for you that you find it hard to sort of stick to a boundary, I'd certainly recommend cash is king, as they say, but it really helps, or queen. So it can really help you to stick to your budget. Another, couple of things that I'm sure that you're already across is as I've mentioned before, is using an app if it's helpful, if it works for you. Doesn't work for everybody, but using that app can also be really helpful if you're really tech savvy and like to have all of that connected to your internet banking. Making sure that the tip here is to pay yourself first, but I would actually be, you're always paying yourself first and making sure that every dollar has that assigned purpose, and working on that zero-based budget. Another, more tips in terms of sticking to budget is to wait a week on new purchases. So instead of getting stuck into that instant gratification and buying things, to make sure that you're giving yourself a little bit of buffer in time to reflect and think, is there something else or an alternative method here? Do I have something already that I could fulfill this same need? Or solve this problem, or maybe I've already got a clothing item that's just like that one. Maybe I don't need that bag to go on that work trip because I can borrow someone else's. So it's just a matter of giving yourself that little bit of time and space, although the shops really love, and online shops follow you around and really like you to feel like you've got to make a decision and there's the last ones left and all of that kind of thing. Try to step back and create some space between you and those new purchases. Certainly avoid shopping when you're stressed, and I would also add to that shopping in the evenings. Research has shown that you certainly spend more and you get when you're tired, and your emotional levels can be a little bit more depressed. So I'd certainly avoid pressing, purchase at nighttime. Even wait to sleep on it and think about it in the morning. When you're looking at budgeting and trying to stick to it, having a support group and people on your side is really helpful, even if it's just a friend or a family member who you feel comfortable that you can share with, that you've created a budget and you're really going to stick to it and you've got some financial goals, that they can help you. Because I know sometimes that the peer pressure to go out or eat out or whatever it might be can be difficult. But if you've got, you know, at least somebody on your side in your court to sort of back you up and might support you in a cheaper option for things if you're wanting to readjust your budget a little bit and pull back in some areas to enable you to reach some other financial goals. When you are budgeting as well, it can be really, you know, although it might seem like a no-brainer, but yeah, keep your budget realistic. So when you are setting those targets for yourself, make sure that they are realistic, and it's a continual process, as I said. So don't be too hard on yourself if you're not getting everything right. It's a continuous improvement. So it's tweaking, and modifying your behavior and giving yourself good feedback when you are, you know, following that budget. So include some treats or rewards, and yeah, accept that there will be slip ups sometimes. But the main thing is that you're pulling in on that control, and you're in terms of having a budget, you're deciding that, you know, your financial well-being is important. And because of that, you know, it has an impact on your, you know, physical, mental, and emotional well-being. All of that is highly linked. So having a budget is a really important part. It plays such a central role in creating that financial security, that sense of control, and enabling you to meet all of your expenses and then have money left over. So just some final tips here to stick to a budget. Keep it real, set up those auto save, anything that you can make automatic once you've negotiated your expenses or you know that they are set, to have them all set up so it's easy for them to take place and that you know that you'll have the money set aside for them. Things that are expensive, like meals, plan them out. So we're not just doing lots and lots of little small trips to the shops, but you know, the more often you go, the more money you spend. So try and find a balance there that works with you. Initially, as I mentioned before, thinking weekly with your budget can be really helpful to start with. You know, set your budget for, you know, a longer period, but then start to manage and track it on that weekly period, because then you'll start to get feedback as well. And that will build your momentum and your satisfaction with it as well. Checking your social calendar ahead of time can also be helpful with that. So you can plan ahead if you know that you might have a friend's wedding, you might have a particular travel date or birthday parties, things that you need to allocate money towards as well. The more notice that you've got and the more planning time you have, the better position you are to be able to allocate that money and to always ensure that you're avoiding a debt solution and that you've put money aside. Although it's really hard, you know, finding a way to say no to things as well that just aren't in your financial plan at the moment, or you know, finding ways to adjust perhaps some of the things that you're doing that still allow you to have, you know, those connections and meetups with friends and family, but that may not be that same financial burden. Ditch the credit card is a big one. So it's just an unnecessary cost. So having a budget's really going to help you to get rid of the credit card and then enable you to move into that financial wellbeing space where you're in control. You have your own emergency funds and extra funds set aside. But that means that you don't need to rely on any of those catchy wizard wallet, afterpay, all of those costly, horrible solutions. So, and the final one, which is you know, similar to the slide before, which is really around finding an accountability partner, which can be really, really helpful. And together, the power of that can be really great and really great for your relationship too, that you know, working on it together, or you have that trust and openness to be able to talk about it together. So again, the final message that I'd love everyone to take away is, you know, thinking about your budget like a toothbrush. Everybody needs one. Taking good care of your money by giving every single dollar a job and tracking your spending daily or weekly or monthly, as I said, as you get on top of it. It's just good financial hygiene. So I hope that I've really convinced you in terms of having a budget and setting one up. We haven't got any students online tonight, so there's no Q&A. We didn't have any questions come in. But in terms of getting in touch, if you need any help with your budgeting, want to just talk it through with me, or, you know, a little bit hesitant in how you're going to get started, or maybe you just need a little bit of motivation to get started, SCPA have engaged me on a one-on-one basis too to provide support to students individually. And this is at no cost to you at all. So if you'd like to get in touch to organise one of these sessions with me, please feel free to email skills@scpa.net.au and we can book in, and I can certainly help you to build that budget. We can have a look together, and yeah, it's highly confidential, personalised, and we can really set some realistic budget plans that you feel really good about. And that's the end of our session. So I hope that you find that helpful, and I look forward to meeting up with some of you when you join some of our future financial webinars. And if you've got any questions or feedback, please get in touch with the SCPA. We love to hear from you. And thank you again for listening.